It's funny to think about when millennials were sort of breaking onto the job market for the first time, and now there's two generations after us, and the older cohort of millennials is in their 40s, and so it's like, well, at what point are we not going to be the young people on the block anymore? I think it's arrived. I love labels when they help you find like-minded people. And so thinking like young professional, where am I going to find those people? And I hate labels when they put you in a box. And so I have this, this kind of call it a love-hate relationship with even the term young professional. What I am amazed by and so inspired by and love in our space is the continued and growing support for the next generation of leaders. To your point, there are so many of them, and at some point you got to just say, all right, you're not just a young professional, you're a professional, and you know your stuff. And I think it's about we've got so many great leaders in our space who have been here for so many years, and the wisdom and the insights that they have, it's like, how do you replace that as they start to retire? And on the flip side, I think being sure that we're investing in learning and growing and asking the questions has been so important for so many of the folks that I see taking the seats and kind of stepping up. And it's just been so wonderful to see all of the support in so many places for that next generation. And what we know to be true is that if we as an industry aren't doing that, aren't attracting and inviting in that next generation of talent, we're going to get left behind.
I'm really excited to have Lauren Culp, Executive Director of the National Credit Union Foundation, on to the Credit Union Nation podcast. Thank you, Lauren, for joining us.
I am so excited to be here. It's always great to catch up with you, Tom.
Yes, you as well. You as well. I think the last time we saw each other in person was like forever ago. It was in Disney World at Epcot Center when we were at America's Credit Unions conference or whatever it used to be called. And we went and walked through the park and like we're supposed to do experiential learning. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun, right?
And I've got to imagine we've crossed paths since then and just haven't, in the throes of people, throngs of people, we haven't seen each other, but it's always great to get to connect and catch up.
Yes, yes. And I was going through your career and some of the things that you've done previously. So before this, you were the president and CEO of CU Insight. Before that, you were at Filing Research Institute, and then before that, you were at True North Federal Credit Union. I feel like I didn't know that you're from Alaska originally. Is that where you were born?
I'm from the East Coast actually, but when I was 18, I went up to Juneau for a summer job and I loved it and thought if I'm ever going to move here, it should probably be now. And I spent about 6 years there. So I'm not from Alaska, but I got my start at a credit union there just because I needed some money to get through school. So they had tuition reimbursement and that was good enough for me. And it's been a great journey ever since.
Yes, well, Alaska has a great credit union culture, as you know. In fact, my last guest on the podcast was Helen Mickle, who is the president and CEO of Tongass Federal Credit Union in Ketchikan. So we've got like a really strong Alaska connection on this podcast going of late.
And the Alaska credit unions are so supportive of the overall industry and they're so well connected to it. And I have to give a big shout out to my CEO when I was at True North, Lauren McVeigh, who without her support, I would not be anywhere near where I am today. And so just the ways that they plug in and support the national movement, it's really exciting.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Huge shout out to Alaska, all our Alaska friends and Alaska credit unions. We love you out there. So, today we're really talking about your new world as being the executive director of the National Credit Union Foundation. Super, super exciting. I just wanted to hear how things are going. Maybe what some of your big goals and strategic priorities are. So let's start with there. You've been on the job for a little over 6 months or so. How are those early months going? And how are you doing in sort of achieving some of the things that you're hoping to set out to do?
Yeah. 9 months, I think, actually. So
Nine
December.
months. I'm sorry, I shorted you.
I know time has flown. It's been really exciting. My earliest priorities, and first of all, I have to give a big shout out to Gigi Highland, who really brought the foundation to where it is today. And I've been saying this, if you heard me talk, you probably heard me say this. It's pun not intended, but she's left such an amazing foundation for us to build our next chapter on. So huge shout out there. And how do you build on something like that? And so we've got a lot of ideas, but my early priorities have really been getting to build relationships and learn all things foundation. We have a really amazing board. There's 17 folks on our board, and they are so passionate and getting to learn their dreams for the foundation and their ideas, and then getting to meet with all of the folks who make the work that we do possible, all of our donors, and have gotten to meet with so many folks in the industry just to see, what are you looking for, and we know that the credit union mission and financial well-being is so important. And so helping to define what that looks like going forward has been one of the biggest things that we've been working on. And so we're excited. There's a lot going on at the foundation. We just had a really successful strategic planning with the board in May. And so we're getting some great momentum, and there's going to be a lot of cool things coming.
Okay, that's great to hear, and I'm glad you did a shout out to Gigi. This podcast was born after she left the foundation, but she would have been a candidate to join for sure because we work together a lot on small credit union things. In the past, the foundation had grant dollars, and she was always like first to reach out to us and say, are there ways that we can support small credit unions? Whether that's scholarships to DE, and other funding for financial well-being for all. So Gigi, we love you. Thank you for your support as always. We hope you're enjoying retirement and whatever else it is that you're doing in your post-foundation world. One of the things that I'm most excited about as I've sort of followed your trajectory at the foundation so far is, your emphasis on building a great team, right? Like you already have a fantastic team there. We know a lot of, at YCUP, we know a lot of great people who already work for the foundation, but there's nothing like really adding fantastic talent to a team to really achieve a lot of success. So, can you talk a little bit about your talent strategy and, some of the things that you're trying to build there from a team standpoint?
We have an amazing team already, and so it's been really fun to get to know each and every one of them. And there's so much passion about what we do, and so it's been really inspiring to get to know, not only the board but also the folks who are on staff with us. And to your point, though, we have added some new roles, and so we've been really excited about what that means for the future of what we're doing. And as we've been building out our new strategy, one of the big things that we're looking at is helping to move from just talking about the credit union why to also tangibly showing and documenting how people are doing it. And so there are so many credit unions that are already doing such amazing work with financial well-being and in the communities and things like that. And so a lot of the roles that we're building have all been designed to help us better tell the story of what credit unions are doing so that more credit unions can get on board. We just saw the Maine Credit Union's campaign for ending hunger win a Wegner Award in 2025. It feels like it was ages ago. It was just in March. And so, as an example, could we document how they did that? And then could a credit union in Florida do it or a credit union in California? And so that's the type of work that we're looking at doing and seeing what people need in the industry. What is the thing that we really need to be focusing on today as it relates to financial health and financial well-being? And so that's where these positions have come from. And a lot of it is, really exciting. We've got our chief marketing and experience officer role, a DE director, and so things like that, that we're so sure that as we invest in some of the storytelling and some of the programming, that everything kind of follows from that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I really love that. I mean, we benefit from working in an industry where leaders, organizations are so willing to share what it is they're doing to make them successful. I mean, there are so many industries where I can't imagine that that's the case, where people like really keep their secrets close to the vest because they're competitors and they don't want other people to know their secrets to success. But in the credit union industry, we do not suffer that. And a lot of it is because there isn't as much competition because of field membership and that kind of thing. But, I think that there are probably millions of examples of two credit unions that serve the same market or close to the same market that are still willing to collaborate, share resources, and share ideas. And so, the ability to acknowledge that and identify that, and then, try to document those things and allow others to benefit from it. I mean, I've always felt like, especially coming from the trade association side, that was like the greatest value we could provide was to identify those success stories and help other credit unions recreate them. So I think that's a brilliant strategy, and looking forward to seeing how that unfolds and builds out at the foundation. I will say one of the positions that you identified is the DE director. And I think all of us DEs are waiting really excitedly to see who ultimately gets that role. I'm not going to ask you to name names, but just curious to know, your approach to filling that role. It's a very prestigious role in the industry. You've had some really big names hold that position in the past. So do you feel any pressure, filling that role? Like, what are your thoughts about how you go about finding the right person for that job?
I don't know that you would say it's pressure necessarily, but we certainly feel the weight of what the DE program is and what it means, and want to make sure that we're being really thoughtful and really intentional about who that next leader of the program is. So we have done a ton of work thinking about what do both incoming potential DE graduates and the DE alumni network that is so amazing. What do both of those kind of constituencies need from the program? And so I can say without, not naming any names, of course, we hope to have, this person identified pretty soon. And we know that one of the really big priorities will be engaging this amazing alumni group. There are so many best classes ever, and so many folks who are in the best class ever. And we know that there's so much opportunity for us to engage and learn from one another. So that'll be a really big priority for this person. Certainly, there have been such amazing leaders of the DE program over the years. Shout out to Lois Kitch, who turned it into what it is today. And as we think about this next chapter, I think it's finding the balance between what can evolve and might need to evolve to better meet the needs of the U.S. credit union professionals today that are going through the program. And then also on the flip side, where do we honor our roots and say like this process is sort of the special sauce, and that's something that we can't change. And so I think all of those things will be something that the DE program director gets to tackle alongside some really really amazing DE alumni, and we're really excited for the future of the program.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I can put my plug in, and I'm not going to hold you to this because that would be unfair. But one of the things that I heard didn't happen anymore was the secret shopper experience,
Oh.
and I can see why. Like, I understand, like maybe there's some liability involved and that kind of thing. But it was super fun and also like really insightful to see, what other financial institutions are doing and how customers and consumers are treated by financial institutions that aren't credit unions. More seriously and somberly, like my partner in DE and I, we went into a pawn shop and stood in line at a pawn shop, waiting behind real people who were waiting to, sell something or buy something back. And, the gravity of that really, really hit home that credit unions can, step in and help those folks who are facing these difficult financial situations so that they don't have to approach a pawn shop that's going to charge you 500% interest on different things, right? And so I think that was really powerful, whether it happens again or not. I think it was just a great reminder of the power of credit unions. The other really, on the more lighter side, experience with secret shoppers is my partner, who was, oh, what was his name? Oh, he's gonna kill me if he's listening to this. He's the president of CU of the Rockies. God, what is his name? It doesn't. I'll come up with it. I will come up with it. He and I went into a bank and we pretended to be a company that was starting food trucks, and we wanted a business loan. And we went through like a long, a long way through the story. And we even got sent to like a central underwriting office to talk to an underwriter. And at that point, we're like, we need to leave. Something came up. So maybe that's why, maybe we're the reason why they stopped doing it, because we were causing so many problems. But it was a great program, and with or without it, DE is so transformational. It really does teach you the magic and the impact of credit unions, and just so many great memories. So many great memories. Okay, so pivoting here, so DE is obviously a big part of the foundation's work and has been for some time. The other kind of core pillars have been CUAid and also the financial well-being for all piece. Do you see those three areas kind of continuing forward as part of the foundation's work? Are there things that could be added, tweaked? What's the plan for some of those core areas of the foundation?
We've had such an amazing time sort of planning the next chapter of the foundation with our board and with our team and with the folks in the industry. And I think when we look at the future, certainly financial well-being is that kind of flag that we plant in the ground and we say, this is what we do as credit unions. We know, and to your point, some of us, you can get somewhat removed from the realities that so many everyday Americans face going to a pawn shop or a payday lender or just thinking about how you're going to actually put food on the table. And so that is, to your point earlier, the power and the amazing work that the DE program does. It helps to open your eyes to all of the realities if you don't already know, and many of us do know. But then to take that and say, okay, I'm so fired up. You come through DE and you have this amazing experience. And if you haven't been through the CUDE program, this is your plug. Registration is opening in October for the 2026 classes, so it'll be a really amazing opportunity. That said, the question that we hear a lot is, so now what? Right? So I get so fired up, and how then do I go do this? And so that's really what we're focusing on. I would say, yes, CUAid is an amazing program. We're definitely committed to helping to continue to do that work. And I didn't even know all of the nuances of the CUAid program. And if you don't, it really is designed to help credit union people get back on their feet after times of natural disaster. And what that means is it looks like a lot of times small dollar loans to people who might have lost their groceries or lost their roof or need other support where their insurance funding maybe hasn't kicked in yet, that sort of thing. And so there are these small dollar grants that are available to credit union employees and volunteers who are impacted. And there are also opportunities for credit unions that have branch operations impacted, things like that. So it's a really cool way to see that. I think Gigi always called it the collective generosity of the credit union system. That's exactly what it is. And so that is definitely something that we're focused on and really looking at how do we talk about financial well-being? Do we define it a certain way? A lot of times we've used the definition from government agencies and things like that. So we're looking at what would we as an industry define financial well-being as? And I think off to the races will be how we do it and how we help one another to get there. And so there's a lot that's going on. I would say you're not going to see CUAid go away and certainly not DE, but we're excited about some of the new things that we're building.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I heard once that, financial well-being could be best measured by someone's perception of their own personal finances, right? Like you can look at the dollars, you can look at median income or, some of those measures that we use, how much money you have saved for an emergency and those kind of things. But oftentimes it's really about your own perception of how you're doing. And so I do love the idea of, saying, of doing some sort of like baseline survey and saying how do you feel about your personal financial situation and then measuring that over the course of time to say, do I feel better, do I feel more secure, more stable in my personal finances? So there's probably a lot of different ways that you're considering that financial well-being definition, and I know that's going to live strong and true at the foundation for the time forward. Okay, so the other thing that the foundation often is known for is the Wegner Awards, but also CUFinHealth is the other sort of big moment on the calendar for the foundation. So those are kind of two big moments where the foundation is really front and center for our industry. Do you feel like you'd like to expand that in any way? Maybe not necessarily through events, but would you like the foundation to be more top of mind for credit unions and the industry overall? As a credit union is thinking about how it does its work on a day-to-day basis.
I definitely think that there is opportunity. Maybe, I don't know that I care all that much if people are thinking of us personally, but if they're thinking of the work that we do together. And certainly I see a lot of opportunity for that. We've been talking internally about the ways that we can bring sort of cohorts together, groups together who are all working on the same types of projects or the same types of impact initiatives. And so certainly there's a lot there. And I would say, it's hard to run a credit union. It is very hard. And there are so many different things that come at you every day. You think about technology and fraud and talent and, oh gosh, advocacy and the tax status. And then you think about the regulation and the cost of compliance. And the list just grows longer and longer and longer. What we want to do at the National Credit Union Foundation is make it really easy to focus on financial well-being. Make it really easy for credit unions. And we know there are so many folks who are doing such amazing work. Sometimes it's just as simple as connecting them. And sometimes it looks like helping to come up with an answer where one doesn't yet exist. And so there's a lot to be done as far as the mission of credit unions and the reason that we exist. And by the way, this is a huge benefit to the advocacy story too. It's the other side of the coin, right? The CU difference coin, if you will. On the one side, we are doing the really good work with credit unions of impacting communities and making sure that financial well-being is center for all of us and our strategy and the products that we build and the work that we do. And then that's the story that you can go tell, as you hike the hill and talk to your representatives. And so it's a really cool kind of piece to play. And I would say that there's definitely talk of where we can go deeper and where we can help to connect even more of the amazing folks in our space who are doing that good work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are certainly so many opportunities for collaboration among credit unions in that space, which kind of leads me to my next thought, which is around collaboration among leagues and, specifically the foundations that a lot of the leagues run. So first, I guess, pop quiz for you. This wasn't on the script. Does every state league have a state foundation?
No, they don't all, and some of them, a lot of them operate very differently, but most do.
Okay. All right. Well, you passed. You passed the quiz. So, I think that when I think about my time back at the National Association and the importance of, our relationships with the state leagues and, we worked with them on conferences, obviously in advocacy and in compliance. There were a lot of different ways that we collaborated and tried to sort of facilitate and foster collaboration across the league side. What is your thinking on how you might foster that collaboration at the state foundation side for those that have them?
That there is an amazing and really robust State Credit Union Foundation network already, and they've got so much cool structure built into what they do. And so I would say that they are that network that the State Credit Union Foundations have built has been amazing. And the National Credit Union Foundation participates in a lot of the work that they do. And you see the collaboration at every level. There are events that they work on together. There are things that we do together. So CUAid is a great example of that. A lot of times, if there is a disaster, if there is a state credit union foundation, they oftentimes take the lead in saying, what is the need? Let's assess who needs what and where everyone is. And so then we might come in to provide funding and to support, but they're usually the boots on the ground in that situation. And so we can collaborate on work like that. So it's an amazing network, and I would say it's certainly cooperation among cooperatives. And what I have been so amazed by as I've come into this role, the state credit union foundations are not, I hadn't really engaged a whole bunch with that. And the story that I always kind of told her, the metaphor I always use is it's like you live your whole life in a house, and then one day you open a door and you realize there's this whole other half of the house and you never went in it. And that's what it's felt like. This industry has such amazing pockets of collaboration that I would say I didn't get exposed to a lot in my past lives. And so it's been really fun to see the work that they do. It's very, very inspiring.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I really love that analogy. Yeah, hopefully, like, you had a bathroom in the first half, so at least you had like, some basic amenities. That's really great. Well, so I think that that's a nice segue to ask you about some big news in the credit union industry over the past week or so, and someone who is really supportive of league collaboration and wants the credit union family to really come together. His name is Scott Simpson, was just named the president and CEO of America's Credit Unions starting in November, I believe. He has a role at the National Credit Union Foundation. Can you talk a little bit about how that structure works and what you know about Scott and what are you looking forward to working with him?
Yeah. We are so excited that Scott is coming on board at America's Credit Unions, and it's been an amazing, amazing experience getting to work with Jim Nussle too. So we thank him for his leadership. We're really excited as he hands the baton over to Scott. Scott is such a collaborative leader, and it's been clear in all of his relationships. He, I would say, is someone who is able to bring the credit union system together and really unify us. And so we're so excited about that. The sort of a second part of the question that you asked, the role here at the foundation, the America's Credit Union CEO also serves as the foundation's president. And so I, as executive director, work with that person, and he has a seat, a non-voting seat on our board. And so it's really, really amazing because what that does is it gives us the chance to work hand in hand with the National Trade Association. And so we are the foundation affiliate of America's Credit Unions. And the work that they're doing, the foundation truly, like I said, it's the other side of the coin to be able to invest in the impact that we are designed for. And so we're really excited for Scott's perspective and his insights. It's going to be an amazing journey. We're all kind of so excited to get some time on his calendar. And so I know it's not until November that he starts. So we're trying to to pace ourselves here, but we're really excited to work with him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm glad you brought up Jim. First, as his time comes to a close as the leader of the National Trade Association. Jim was always a big supporter of the small credit union programs that we ran, and was a really fantastic leader for the National Trade Association and for the industry. For a very long time. And similarly, Scott, I think, brings such a I don't know. Such like a business mind to to the job and to the work. I got to work with him, a couple of times when I was working for the association on some conferences, and he always just brought such a light but like serious sort of tone to the conversation. If that sounds kind of weird, but I think you know what I mean. Like he has like a gentle way about him, but you also know that he really knows his stuff and really knows what he's talking about. And also, he has a really strong advocacy background, which is really important for that role and for the National Association overall. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, what he does with the industry, or with the trade association, and how he leads that organization into the future. Super exciting times ahead for America's credit unions. And so, okay, we're to my last question, and it was the question I was waiting to ask you. Basically, since you've taken this job, and look, we're both millennials, right? And I have to say personally, I was thrilled to see you named as executive director, not just because you're a really talented and smart individual, but because you're a millennial, you're a fellow millennial, a fellow young person. And I think when folks like yourself take on leadership roles in the industry, it's like a signal that our generation is starting to take on more and more leadership roles across the credit union movement. So just curious to know how you feel about just landing the role, and also representing our generation, that's sort of growing into these big roles.
It's funny to think about when millennials were sort of breaking onto the job market for the first time, and now there's two generations after us, and the older cohort of millennials is in their 40s, and so it's like, well, at what point are we not going to be the young people on the block anymore? I think it's arrived. I love labels when they help you find like-minded people. And so thinking like young professional, where am I going to find those people? And I hate labels when they put you in a box. And so I
Yeah.
have this kind of call it a love-hate relationship with even the term young professional. What I am amazed by and so inspired by and love in our space is the continued and growing support for the next generation of leaders. To your point, there are so many of them, and at some point you got to just say, all right, you're not just a young professional, you're a professional, and you know your stuff. And I think it's about we've got so many great leaders in our space who have been here for so many years, and the wisdom and the insights that they have, it's like, how do you replace that as they start to retire? And on the flip side, I think being sure that we're investing in learning and growing and asking the questions has been so important for so many of the folks that I see taking the seats and kind of stepping up. And it's just been so wonderful to see all of the support in so many places for that next generation. And what we know to be true is that if we as an industry aren't doing that, aren't attracting and inviting in that next generation of talent, we're going to get left behind simply because people won't know and we won't have the talent to help win that war for talent, if you will. We need those people. We're not really mentioned as an industry when people are graduating college and it's okay, where do you want to work? Okay, well, I'm thinking Google or Facebook or Microsoft or Apple. Nobody says, oh, I'm thinking a credit union. I've been doing this a while. I've asked a lot of audiences, anybody intend to work for a credit union? I think I got one. One time maybe did actually intend to, and that I think was a family connection or something like that. So it's really needed for the future of our industry, especially we know that being able to steer a credit union forward requires the right people in the right places. And so it's been really fun getting to see so many folks who are stepping up to the plate. And it's also been really inspiring getting to see all of the investment that our industry is making in attracting and training and growing those people. So I would say I think we're spot on. There's always room for improvement, but I'm really excited about the trends that we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. I feel like you said everything that I've been thinking about. Young people in this movement and our industry's ability and need to attract, more talent, especially on the younger side. We need like a industry-wide succession plan. And that starts with, giving voice and giving leadership roles to the next generation, right? Because that inspires more and more folks to say, this is a place where I can really grow my career. This is an industry that is willing to give future generations a leadership opportunity. And you're such a great example of that. And the fact is you would have gotten the job no matter what your age was. But as like a fellow millennial, I was like, heck yeah, I'm so glad you got that job. So anyway, thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate you taking the time. Lauren Culp, Executive Director of the National Credit Union Foundation. Thank you for joining the Credit Union Nation podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Tom. Always great to chat.